Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the 31 Days of Horror. I'm your host, Mood616, and thank you once again for stopping in, guys. Yes, 31 Days of Horror Volume 8, Day 7, coming at you live and direct. Alright, so today we're going to take it back to, it says 2016 on here. It sounds about right. With a film directed by an Italian director, hilariously known as the Spaghetti Ed Wood, also known as Luigi Cozzi. Now, Luigi Cozzi is actually a director that I've always really enjoyed, man. Of course, he started out as being a protege to Dario Argento. He did Contamination in 1980. He also directed Paganini Horror, which Donald Pleasence was actually in that film. And in 1990, he directed an awesome film called The Black Cat, which ultimately became his last feature film. And the reason for this is because if you know anything about Italian cinema around the late 80s, early 90s, it basically just collapsed. They couldn't get funding for films, and the whole genre making just collapsed into basic obscurity. And Luigi Cozzi at the time, of course, couldn't get funded for films, and so he gave it up like a lot of Italian directors at the time. So basically fast forward to 2014, where he attended I think it was he was brought in as a judge for some type of competition in Paris or something like that. Anyways, it kind of reunited him with the film industry. It kind of got him engaged in it again and stuff like that. Anyways, he decided that he wanted to make another feature film. And you got to remember, his last film was in 1990. And, you know, this is like 24, 25 years later. It's kind of a crazy thing to do, you know. The film industry's changed so much, especially, obviously, in Italy, but just in general in the world and stuff like that. No one's shooting on film anymore. Everyone's doing digital, blah, blah, blah. So in 2014, he decides to adapt a script that he had actually pitched when he was working at Canon. So when he did the Hercules films for Canon and stuff like that, he was involved with writing those and stuff like that. Anyways, he had pitched this idea to Globin, and they basically turned it down, which was this script for Blood on Melies' Moon. It's going to be the movie that we're talking about. Anyways, they didn't want the film, and I thought that was really interesting. It's probably because the premise is like so out there. It identifies with so many different genres of filmmaking. I think they probably looked at the script and said, no, we can't make this. It's going to be too high budget for us and stuff like that. It's just not going to make the money back. And they were businessmen, so they passed on the script. Anyways, this is the script that he decided to adapt in 2014. Now, in 2014 through 2016, he shot this movie. So it took 2 years. He basically shot it like scene for scene. Like he would shoot an entire sequence, and then he would go and edit it, and then he would shoot another sequence, and then put this movie together, which ultimately ran about 2 hours long. It's kind of a crazy thing. And, you know, when you make a film over that time of period, when it's fully independently funded, like he didn't have any backers, there was no executive producers. This movie was really just Luigi Cozzi making a fucking movie. It's absolutely insane. So he had full creative control, which it kind of shows here because the runtime is extremely long for essentially an independent film. And this is what happens with a lot of independent films, when you have all the, you know, when you have all the, you know, basically the world given to you. You know, you have total control over everything. You want to use all the footage that you shoot. And I feel like that's exactly what happened in this film. But anyways, short and brief little history of this film. But yeah, Blood on Melies' Moon. Melies' film, Moon, which of course is based on, you know, Journey to the Moon by George Melies in the early 1900s, which is considered to be the very first feature film, really. So ultimately, this one starts out with like a 10-minute prologue, and it's going into the whole history of, like, you know, the starting of like Louis de Prince's the guy that invented film, essentially. So if you don't know the story of Louis de Prince, he basically is credited with starting or inventing film. In 1888, he's credited with this. He never got to showcase his invention to the public because he was perfecting it, whatever. And in 1890, he mysteriously disappeared. This is actually based on true facts and stuff like that. And he disappeared. And in 1891, Thomas Edison basically showcased this, you know, this filmmaking technique and stuff like that, and got credit for it. I think it's been reversed and stuff, and I think Louis de Prince actually gets the credit for it now. But anyways, so that's where the premise comes from. So it goes into the history of that, and it goes into the history of, you know, that famous building that burnt down back in France and stuff like that. that the prince was, he was all involved with and stuff with this magician and stuff. And anyways, it goes through like a 10-minute, like huge prolonged narrative and stuff like that, introducing all these real life events and stuff like that, which is kind of like the predecessor to what's going on here. So the film opens up in present day. It's not a period piece. It opens up in present day with Luigi Cosi in his actual Profondo Rosso shop that he actually owns in Italy, hence the deep red. And of course, Luigi Cosi plays himself in the film. So he gets this mysterious package, and it's basically a bus of the moon from Journey to the Moon. And he's like, okay, so where did this thing kind of come from? He doesn't have any clue what's going on with this and stuff. And so basically this event kind of triggers off like a murder that happens in his store, and ultimately leads to him trying to figure out exactly what happened to Louis the Prince, and, the whole backstory of, the development of film and leading into George Melies' Journey to the Moon. And this one just involves like two-way mirrors, supernatural killers. It involves this mysterious French book that may hold the secret and stuff like that. It's got like all these like real life characters that are involved in this, parallel dimensions and things like that. So anyways, that's kind of the premise and the synopsis of the film. So it's basically yeah, so that's what it is. So my thoughts on the film. Now, this is a very, very interesting, complex narrative story. You would never think that the story was going to be this complex for such an independent film. But the short and long is that Luigi Cosi plays himself in the film. It's shot very pseudo-documentary that involves historical, factual, facts and events mixed in with like, a lot of nonfiction. With a lot of fictional stuff. So this one blurs the lines of like, fiction and nonfiction and incorporates it all, and kind of done like with a film narrative, but shot pseudo documentary at the same time. Like I said, Luigi Cosi plays himself. His wife is in the film. We've got a brief cameo from Dario Argento. Of course, he has to appear in the Profondo Rosso store. There's a scene where he's eating dinner with Lamberto Bava, and they're discussing things and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people in this film that you'd recognize if you're a fan of Italian cinema. So it has that pseudo documentary feel to it, but at the same time, it's done with a film narrative. There is so much damn story to this. It's absolutely incredible. I had to look up some of the things that they were talking about, and a lot of it was based on factual events and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. With the magician that I think his name is Houdin or something like that. Anyways, he was the guy that was associated with the prince, and there was this famous fire that killed like 100 people and stuff. That plays into the narrative, and some other people in this French book, and like actually the narrative is really, really interesting. The problem is with this movie is more or less the way it's constructed. Now, like I said, it's shot with a film narrative and it's shot pseudo documentary style. So it's very jarring at times. Like, we know Luigi Cosi's playing himself, but then it's mixed in with like some fictional stuff with some real life stuff. So you're always trying to decipher what's really going on, what's really true, what's really not and stuff. So it's jarring at times. It's really, really jarring. Mixed in with the long runtime, it's like, oh my god, you feel like when you watch this movie, your head's going to explode because there's so much like information flying at you, and it really does. Like, it's very, very talky. There's really no downtime in the film at all. There's no boring parts. It's just so much fucking narrative and craziness. Now, with that said, I really did enjoy it. I feel like the third act wasn't really my favorite, if you want to call it a third act. Like, the end of the movie I felt was a little bit lackluster, almost comical at times. And with that said, this movie is not a damn comedy. There's no comedic elements in it whatsoever. It's played super serious. And at the same time, with that said, though, this movie kind of acts as like an homage to Journey to the Moon by George Melies too, which is kind of cool. There's actually a whole sequence in the film which is a straight homage to the movie, where it basically kind of it homages, the whole classic scenes and stuff like that. And it goes into like the whole silent film stuff where he's like talking, but it's coming up with the subtitles and stuff. It's really cool actually how he did it. The overall product of the movie, it's super low budget. It's very, very independent. And with that said, the visuals are major cheesy at times. Like, it actually sounds, first and foremost, it sounds like a full moon feature. And that's not a bad thing. I love the scores in early full moon movies. What we get here is it has that type of feel. It feels like a full moon movie. Even mixed in with their later effects and maybe like some 90s effects and stuff like that. It feels like you're watching a full moon movie, which is not really a bad thing. So, but when you're watching this in like 2016 or 2024, it comes off a little bit dated. it's very low budget effects. So the visuals kind of play into it and it makes you smile at times. You're like, okay. And there's a lot of visuals, man. There's a lot of visuals and a lot of effects in this movies with things happening with, you know, like the rocket with the moon and stuff like that and tons of stuff. But, you know, the way he shot this movie, he uses a lot of effects in the way he shoots it because he shot it with like super low budget cameras and stuff like that. It's not shot the greatest. It doesn't really look the greatest. It definitely falls into the umbrella of Intervision, Severa's sister label. And yeah, it just feels like it should be an Intervision film. At first I thought this was a Severin release, but no, it falls into Intervision. Very, very low budget filmmaking. But, you know, overall, man, I had a good time with this, man. Like, a couple of the kills in the film were pretty decent. I just don't like the way they were fully edited with the effects. I wish they were done a little bit differently, but I get it. It's playing into this fantastical, magical world, these parallel dimensions and stuff. So it's supposed to alter your reality, right? Because like I said, most of this movie is set in reality, but then it's set in this bizarro parallel universe reality too. So like I said, it's very, very jarring. So there's these moments where like Luigi Cosi wakes up from a dream and people are making fun of him as being like the Italian Ed Wood and stuff. And he's like waking up his wife and it's like real life, right? But it breaks in from like these dream sequences and oh, there's so much happening in this movie. It's just crazy. I would love to know your thoughts on this movie if you guys have actually seen this one. Because I've been waiting for a long time to see this because I'm a big fan of Luigi Cosi. Like I said, The Black Cat's a great film. I love Paganini horror. I love Contamination. A lot of people don't really like that. But I did notice one thing with Luigi Cosi is that he really likes to incorporate real life stories and characters into his movies, like Paganini horror, you know, of course, Paganini. And The Black Cat, you know, it's kind of based on Poe and stuff, like it has those inspirations. I guess Contamination doesn't really base itself on anything real except for the fact that it feels like a fucking genre James Bond movie. It really fucking does. It's kind of crazy. But then this one, like I said, it incorporates a lot of real life people mixed in with some fictional elements. Of course Luigi Cosi plays himself. So it has this like, it's this really weird dynamic, and I think it's pretty cool. I like the pseudo-documentary stuff because I really like watching documentaries, and it just feels real. Like, Luigi Cosi's, like, he's actually pretty cool in this movie. I think some of the coolest stuff for myself in the movie was seeing Luigi Cosi in Profondo Rosso, in his actual store, and having people come in there, just seeing all the shit that he's got for sale in there. But if you don't know, it's basically a homage to Dario Argento. It's in the basement actually has a Dario Argento museum based on all of his films. So you go down into the depths and it's like these big brick walls and everything. It feels like a dungeon, but it has like Demonia, you know, and it's got like Suspiria, Deep Red. It's got like all these type of films. Of course, Demonia was done by Lamberto Bavo, but he produced that film. But yeah, like, it's very, very cool to see. And there's a lot of shots of stuff in the store, which I really appreciate. I really think that's cool. But I think overall, man, I think if you're just an average Italian fan, this one is going to be jarring to the point you're probably going to laugh. Like, I can appreciate the effects and I can appreciate the ambition. This is a very, very ambitious project. Given what the narrative is and what he accomplished with this is pretty damn impressive. I mean, not a lot of like new filmmakers could probably pull something like this off. It's a pretty complex script, to be honest. It's a little, like I said, it's overly jarring. It's a little bit too complex for what it is. The story probably could have been told a little bit easier. But with that said, you know, I mean, it still came out pretty decent. I just wasn't the hugest fan of the actual ending of the movie. The reveal to me was a little bit predictable because this one character's throughout the film, things that are happening and stuff. But at the same time, it's still kind of a cool, fantastical element to the story, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I recommend Blood on Melies' Moon. Melies' Moon. I think that's George Melies. I think that's how you say it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. That artwork is fantastic. It really does represent the film very, very well. You know, of course, with the moon, Profondo Rosso, the store. Pretty cool stuff, man. I really like the stuff, like the pseudo-documentary stuff with like, that dinner scene with Lamberto Bavo just felt super, super real. Like, they're literally in his apartment and Lamberto Bavo's like cooking them pork and all this meals. It's crazy. Like, that was like real shit that they just incorporated into the story, which is pretty neat. But very, very interesting, ambitious, And this is a really hard one to rate because I feel like this movie ran way too long, probably like this review. But with that said, this is a hard one to talk about in short form because there's so much going on. I'm not trying to give away everything that's breaking, with the narrative and what's going on. I would like for you guys to check this one out if you haven't. If it sounds like something that's up your alley, definitely check this one out. And again, if you've seen this one, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments because I'd like to have a conversation about this one. It's very, very... It's intriguing. It's intriguing. I find myself laughing just thinking about some of the effects, but I can't believe it just felt like a modern full moon movie. It's crazy. So the soundtrack, like the score is pretty cool. I was not impressed with like the couple of kill scenes the soundtrack turns into like death metal. I felt like that was even more jarring than going from this fantastical reality to like reality at times. Like there was so much jarness in this. Put $1 in the cup for every time I say jar, right? You guys know that joke from the podcast. But yeah, one adjective to describe this movie, jarring, but fun. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. For all purposes, the ambition sells it for me, man. It really, really does. It's pretty interesting. It's interesting. It's nothing like I've ever seen before. I wonder if there's a commentary on this because I would really like to know that. But anyways. Yeah, Blood on Melies' Moon, 7 out of 10. That's going to do it here for Day 7 on 31 Days of Horror Volume 8. Hope you guys enjoyed the long-ass review. And I'll check you guys tomorrow in Day 8, which is actually another movie that's like 2 hours long. The previous 2 days were films that were an hour long, and then the randomizers decided, hey, those were too short. We're just going to have two 2-hour movies in a row. What the fuck? I did not know this running time was that long when I popped in. I was like, damn, this feels long. And checked it. I was like, holy shit, it's 2 fucking hours. Crazy. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it. I'll check you guys tomorrow in Day 8. And as usual,